In this lesson, we will cover the conditional split. The conditional split splits data within your package based on some sort of condition that you give it. So, for example, in the first couple paragraphs of this lesson in the book, we talked about splitting data by customers to make a mailing list based on whether the customer had kids or not. So we would, in this case, we would use a conditional split to split customers that have kids and ones that don't. And then we also had, in the example, an extra requirement that anyone that has more than 5 kids, which it seems amazing that anyone would, but if they did, we were going to provide them a buy 2 get 1 free coupon. So this is kind of an example of when you would use a conditional split. The conditional split uses the SSIS expression language, which we detailed a little bit more in lesson 17. So if you need a little bit more experience with the expression language, you can go back to there to see some of the expression language. But basically what the conditional split is going to do, based on that conditional expression that we write, it's going to split our data into multiple outputs that can go different ways and different things can happen to it. So in the example I was just talking about, we would have a different mailing list based on the condition that we make. So our SSIS package might create a flat file that has a list of names and addresses, and we're splitting it off between who has kids, who doesn't have kids, and how many kids they have. Alright, so our goal for this example is very similar to the example I just spoke about during the slides. Our company creates mailing lists, and the company that we have is creating a regional mailing list this time. Customers that live in Florida and Georgia are going to get one type of promotion mailed to them, and ones in California and Washington are going to get a different kind. So we need to use a conditional split to split those customers' names and mailing lists into 2 separate flat files. So let's go ahead and begin. We're going to create a new SSIS package by right-clicking on SSIS packages and click New SSIS package. And we're going to rename the package Lesson24. And we want to rename the package object as well, yes. Okay, so our first step is going to be to bring over a data flow, because we're going to be doing all of our work inside of a data flow. Let's go ahead and drag that over. And then we'll name this something more significant because we're dealing with mailing lists. We'll call it DF for data flow. And we'll call it regional mailing list. Okay, once you have that renamed, go ahead and dig into your data flow by double-clicking on it. And then the first step is going to be to bring over a OLEDB source. So go ahead and bring over an OLEDB source from your toolbox. Once you have that brought over, we're going to name this our customer source. Just like that. And then open the OLEDB source editor by double-clicking on it. And we're going to change first we need to create an OLEDB connection manager. I'm going through some of this stuff a little bit faster because we've gone over the sources and some of this other stuff in detail in previous lessons, so I'm going to breeze through this a little bit so we can get to our conditional split we talked about. And in this one we're going to be using AdventureWorks DW 2008, so select that and hit OK. If you want to see how to create a new one, or if you don't have this already created, you hit New and create a new data source. And then we're going to, instead of using a table, we're going to do SQL command. So change from table or view to SQL command. And then enter in the text that we have. This is in the book. It's the just the columns that we want. We don't need all of the columns, but we need these select columns from the dim customer table. So once you have that, if you'd like, you can check out the columns we brought back. We do want all of those columns, so leave that as it is. And you'll notice that we do have a geography key, which we're not going to use in our final destination, but we do need for a lookup. So let's go ahead and do our lookup, because we're going to do a lookup on geography. Just take one more look at this. Our all of the customer data that we have in this customer table does not include regional information like what state the person's from. So we're going to have to do a lookup onto the geography table using our geography key to get that data back. So go ahead and bring over a lookup from your toolbox. Bring that over. and let's name it geography lookup. And we'll connect those two with the green arrow and double click on it. And we're going to leave this as a full cache mode, and it's also still going to be an OLEDB connection manager. And we'll leave everything here default. We'll leave this as fail component if there's no matches. Usually you'll have some kind of error output if there's for some reason there's no matches, but we're using the AdventureWorks database where just about everything's perfect in the AdventureWorks world, so we won't have any no matching rows in this case, in this example. I see one thing we need to change, which we'll do as soon as we get out of this out of this editor, is to change the name of our OLEDB connection manager so we can take off the name of my computer, but we'll do that in just a moment. So in this one, we're going to not use a table as a lookup, we're going to use a query. So change it to use results of a query. And then we have this also in the book. I'm just copying and pasting it from the book text. The select geography key and the state province code from the dim geography table. And then we're going to go to the columns tab. And we've done these lookups before, so if you're unfamiliar with how to use the lookup, refer back to the lookup chapter, the lookup lesson. And we're going to join by the geography key. All I did was click from the input column. Remember, we listed all these columns in our source. So I'm simply joining the geography key, get a better look at it there, to the geography key. And then you select which columns from the lookup you want to return, which in our case is the state province code. So now that adds the state province code to our pipeline of data, which is exactly what we want. Everything else here should be correct now that we have that. We're ready to click OK. Like I said, I noticed that we need to rename this. So rename your connection manager to just say AdventureWorks DW 2008. Once you have changed that, the next step is going to be to bring over a conditional split. So in your toolbox, find the conditional split towards the top and bring that over and connect it. And we're going to do the matching rows. Anytime you have a lookup, this dialog box open because we're using a lookup, it wants to know if the output from the lookup should be the matching rows or the no match rows. We want it to be the matching rows, so select that. And it's going to be going to the conditional split input, and that's correct. It's the only option. Let's click OK. Okay, so the next item is going to be to open up our conditional split transform editor by double clicking on it. And we're going to add a new condition. So I'm going to copy and paste it in here and then I'll describe what it's saying. So let me make this a little larger here. Okay, so we're saying we want when the state province code equals Florida, or the double bars equal or, state province code equals Georgia, or GA, which is what it is in the database for Florida and Georgia. So we have a state province equals Florida or state province code equals Georgia. Okay, so we said in the book that we're going to name this campaign 1. Name that campaign 1. And then the second output is going to be called campaign 2, and it's going to be where Florida, actually this should be where it equals California, or it equals Washington. And this time it's going to be campaign 2. So same idea, this time it's going to be state province code equals California or state province code equals Washington. And let's change the default. You'll see on the bottom here. You'll notice that this editor looks familiar to a derived column or several other editors that have the variables and columns options that you can select from. It also has all the different functions within the SSIS expression language that you can select from. You'll be able to find the operators for equals, and you can even highlight over it and it will give you a description of what the operator does. You'll see we use the equals here. There should also be the or right here, logical or. and we use both those here. You might also notice that inside the expression language, instead of normally in T-SQL you use the single quotes around a string part of the data. In the SSIS expression language, you're going to use the double quotes. So you'll see that there. Very small, but you can see it. Okay, so the default output name, we're going to make no ad campaign. So the only ad campaigns we're creating is going to be for when this part of the region, the Florida and Georgia, and then the campaign 2 is going to be California and Washington. If it's not equal to either of those, then we do not want to create an ad campaign. So here, this is everything we need to set in this menu, and that's everything really that you need to know about the conditional split operator. Just know that once we get past this and we go back into our data flow, that we're going to have two different outputs that we can select, which will be campaign 1 or campaign 2. We also could select the no ad campaign, but we're just going to leave that alone and not send it to an output. Okay, so let's go ahead and click OK. Our next step is going to be to bring over two flat file destinations, which we will call campaign 1 mailing list and campaign 2 mailing list. So let's go ahead and do that. Find your destinations for flat file destinations. I'll just go ahead and bring over two of them here. Okay, now that we have two of them, I'm going to drag one of the green arrows over. It's going to ask me which output do I want. Do I want campaign 1, 2, or the default, which is all the rest. We're going to do campaign 1 here, and we want it to go to the flat file destination. Hit OK. And then just so we can understand which one, it does give you the annotation above the constraint here, but let's go ahead and name it campaign 1 mailing list. Okay, now we can go ahead and do the second one here. And we're going to use campaign 2 here. So we still have this last one. If we click on it, we still have this last one, which is the default. Now we decided that we're not going to use the default because we only want to create a mailing list for the two regions that we specified in our conditional split. Just in this example, anyways. You could have an example some other time where you want to send off all the other records to some other destination. So this one's going to be called mailing list 2, or campaign mailing list 2. So now, if you remember, we have our two destinations. Now we need to create a connection manager for both of them. So to do that, go ahead and open your campaign mailing list 1, and let's create a new flat file connection manager. And we're going to make it delimited, which is OK. So go ahead and click OK. Alright, so let's call this one campaign 1, because that's what we're working on, so we'll call it campaign 1. And then we'll browse to the location we want, which is the C Projects SSIS Trainer. And we'll just call this file campaign1.txt and open it. And we're going to leave it as delimited. And as usual, what I like to do is have the first row to have the column names in it. So once you have that, just notice I put this as the description. This should be the name. Once you have that, go ahead and click OK. And it still wants us, all we have to do is click the Mappings tab to get rid of this warning we have here saying that the map the columns, we need to click the Mappings page. It should automatically recognize the columns because they're the same name. One thing I said we didn't necessarily need to do, but it's okay if we include it, is the geography key. We probably just wanted to have that for the lookup. That's all we really needed it for, but we can keep it in our file if we want to. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there for this example. So click OK. So we have that one set. That one's good. Now we need to set our second one by doing the same exact thing. Create a new flat file connection. Delimited file again. And we'll call this one campaign 2. And we'll browse and create a new file also here called campaign2 .txt and click OK. If you need a refresher on using the file connection manager, that you can do that in lessons 14 and 15. Okay, now that we have that, go ahead and click on the first row is the column names again. We want to keep that how we have it, how we've been doing it, and then click OK. Again, now that we've created that, we need to just click the Mappings tab so that SSIS can figure out which columns to map to. Looks good. Let's click OK one more time. And we're ready to execute the package now. So let's go ahead and do it. Right-click on the package name in your Solution Explorer and hit Execute Package. And we'll see the magic of the conditional split. It's going to use those expressions that we entered to determine whether they should go to campaign 1, which was the Florida and Georgia states, or campaign 2, which was the California and Washington states. And we'll see that it splits it off into two different files, which once it gets going here in just a moment. There it goes, very quick. There was only 6 rows that qualified for campaign 1, while there was 6,707 rows that qualified for campaign 2. So our customers were, it looks like we're primarily on the West Coast. All right, so now that we've experienced how to set up a conditional split using the using the SSIS expression language, we'll take one more gander at it here. We use the equals and or operators. Let's now that we've done that, let's go ahead and review what we've learned about the conditional split. All right, so in this lesson we learned how to use the conditional split. In the example we did, we covered how to conditionally split our data based on a region code to make 2 separate mailing lists. You want to use the SSIS expression language to do that, and what we used at the end was multiple outputs to separate our different mailing lists. And that's how we did the conditional split transform.